here today. So experiences from down under. I'm a librarian. As you can tell, I've been around for a while. I've, I guess, seen the changes from the pre-digital through the digital to the current situation. So it's been a great journey. I guess the other question here is libraries as credible publishers or publishing partners, adding value in the new academic environments. I guess the key points there are partnerships, adding value in the new academic environments, and that's the space we work in. I have to give you some background from the Australian situation before we start, because there's a slightly different set of drivers there that are operating. A bit about Sydney, my rationales, which are slightly different, but these are the things that people come to ask to us about the integrated services, partnerships, and about continuity, and I'll come back to all those later. And with a bit of luck, towards the end, something about sustainability and business models. So the Australian context, a lot of federal government money comes into the universities in Australia. Universities are funded in part from research money by their publication outputs. So in true bureaucratic style, there is the government definition of a research publication, of a journal article, of a book, and they get points, research points, and research points turn into research dollars. So it's very much a driven process. So the HERDC data collection is that process that qualifies and counts publications. We have a research assessment process going on, which also is generating funding for the universities. From those two, the universities, the federal government have funded the development of repositories in every university, mostly in libraries, but they've been funded explicitly to be able to have that publication output assessed and audited. Currently we're going through another funding range around e-research, around data, about publishing, citing and reusing data. So at the moment the government is putting out money to each university, again, to develop data management plans for citation and publishing data. Again, that comes to the library. Also, as in the States, there's funding compliances for public access. But the point about this, I guess, is that there is infrastructure being built in each university out of federal government money, and that underlies the process of publishing. So in Australia, last year we set up a group, the Australian Universities Publishers Group. That's for the 8 members of that group. I won't talk about this very much. The idea was to create a profile for what we do, have an advocacy role. Together, the 8 of us publish about 100 new books a year. We host about 50 open access journals. So at Sydney, the umbrella for the University Press is Sydney East Scholarship. Sydney East Scholarship was set up to integrate the management of digital content with new forms of access and scholarly publishing. So it's to integrate that continuum of process. And it was really built on the expertise the library had already in developing digital projects. And that process underlies the business process, and the business face is Sydney University Press. Sydney University Press operates in a hybrid model. We're a commercial publisher, we're an open access publisher, we're a print publisher, we're an online publisher. We will cover the angles. Traditional history, Sydney University Press was set up initially in the 1960s. It was closed down in the 1980s by the university because of its heavy and expensive infrastructure. It was sold off to OUP. In 2003, the university took the business back again, gave it to the library for us to work in the networked environment. So we have a tradition, we kept the brand and the name, but we're operating in a different context. But we're fairly commercial in terms, I'll come back to this later, in terms of how we can sell content or provide content open access. So, integrating services. These are the kind of things we cover. We have 4 different repositories, all running out of DSpace. We have dark, grey and open. We have a series of digital collections we've built up over the last 20 years, 15, 20 years, out of government grants. We do archiving. We're now into data management and citation with a new set of government funding. We provide the institutional compliance for funding for open access. We get involved in projects from the start, and we're looking at persistent citations in that open or managed access environment. So this is the kind of services we offer. Copyright, e-research support around data, open access. The university is developing an open access policy, other publishing advice, platforms for various projects, journals online using the open journal system, the repository and the press. So to go through this a bit, I'll just introduce some examples as we go. So this was a project that came out of the medical school at Sydney to really get the public debate going about testing for prostate cancer. The book is published by SUP. It's open access through the repository. There's been tens of thousands of downloads of the book itself. We've sold a couple of hundred, which is what we expected to sell. There's a fairly extensive and very clinical campaign through Twitter and social media. The authors are very erudite at actually using Twitter. So the idea was here is we bring our services together to support debate around issues like public health. So we're building partnerships around the life cycle of research. Again, we're very much involved in the whole process from the start to the publication. We have a capacity to look at the emerging forms of research expression, handling data, electronic arts, animation. And we feel, I guess, that we have the agile and lean publishing forms that can get stuff out there fairly fast into a different type of environment. So examples of that. We're involved with the School of Biological Sciences and the New South Wales Environmental Trust to set up this database called Ephemera of plants in the Sydney region. So it's a fairly heavy technical database, large taxonomies, keys, very interactive in terms of a database. But what we were able to do by those integrating services is to bring out a book as well. So this book is being used, derived from the database, new editions come out, it's used as a textbook, it is used in different environments. It is that way of actually getting both those markets. Another project is the Australian Poetry Library. We're involved in this from the start. It's the Australian Research Council funded project. We've digitised over 42,000 poems of poetry. They're available free online. What SUP does is provide a customised anthology facility for either electronic or print-on-demand delivery. So again, we're trying to integrate those processes in a form that delivers to various markets. So continuity among digital ephemera. This hasn't been talked about very much at this conference, I don't think, in terms of long-term digital preservation. I was involved in a project some years ago, a federal government-funded project, which looked at technical sustainability. And out of that came, surprisingly, a finding that there's over 1,000 file formats that are already redundant and can't be used. The amount of the concern about continuity and long-term access to data is a real concern, certainly in Australia amongst researchers and administrators. There's this fear of losing legacy data that's been invested in, and data preservation and digital preservation is seen squarely as a library responsibility. And they're looking to us and they're funding us to do these types of things. So how does that fit into this new kind of publishing environment? And that's something we're interested in terms of how we can exploit that. We cut our teeth on digital preservation through digital collections we've been building up since the mid-1990s. So those we migrated through various forms, different platforms, And that's the kind of, I guess, the kind of skill set we've built up, which has meant people have come to us in terms of digital preservation and digital archiving. So, open journal system. We provide probably about 10 to 12 journals through OJS. This is a very vanilla type of OJS system. In some, we provide a value add as simple as providing a print-on-demand version of the work itself. And surprisingly, we found that's been very attractive, actually, to people who've come in for OJS, that we had this facility to actually generate a dozen piece perhaps to distribute, and then have through our e-store process a way of actually generating content. More recently, we worked with a couple of societies in terms of their content. And what has brought them to us has really been digitising their back sets. So of all these publishers here and other ones, we've had a systematic process of not only just providing an ongoing platform, but digitising their back sets so they're available through the web, that the value that they invested years ago is now available again. And this was a bit of a surprise for us because we didn't really think that there was a demand for this. But in fact, there is a demand. People pay to have them digitised. We put them up. There's a slight business model behind it, but really just to get that stuff out there in open access as fast as possible. Behind this is also a print-on-demand process running. So the Linnaean Society, where in fact the reason I like OJS is that they can release articles as they're approved rather than have them staged at the end of the volume. We also provide a print-on-demand process for them. So, sustainability. I know this is not a matrix, but still it's a table. SUP we see in this kind of presentation, I guess, where we get direct income from sales, diversified income through our e-store process. Through our e-store we sell things, apart from books themselves, we sell our rare book images, we provide services for other departments on campus, where we sell material for them. We have our own backlist, which we trade on. We take a margin with all those people we provide the service for. So that's the direct income. The indirect income is publishing subsidies. The research publication points I've talked about before, they flow back to the university and they trickle down in some way towards the faculty who can then use them, in fact, for future publications. So that's our direct income flow. And those two income flows enable us to be operationally sufficient. The library has a strategic investment in publishing. Two of the staff are paid for out of library funds. Other than that, operationally, it's all based on income. The tangible benefits mostly accrue to the academics themselves, and this is to do with career structure type things. And that's quite important for them, for us to have this process going on. The intangible benefits are the most important, of course, which is actually the impact, the scholarly value going to society itself. So, Sydney University is a fairly hard-headed place, and if you're not making money, you're not going to survive. So the tangible benefits and intangible benefits, kind of, they're recognised, but they're recognised as a nice thing on the side. It's the income we have to generate that they will then see that we have a role. So we have to play at both sides in terms of how we operate. So in terms of credibility and futures, we continue to demonstrate, or try to demonstrate, our credibility as a publisher. That is, not as a kind of self-indulgent process that the library is running, but actually a partner engaged in a new way in the research process that's going on. So we do that through partnerships. Everything we do has a partner. Most things we do have a partner. We do that by impact in terms of social impact. The prostate cancer type of book is one we would push in terms of how we've contributed to that kind of debate. By maintaining operational sustainability through that matrix I showed you, but delivering tangible value and benefits to the library itself, which is the position of the library, the strategic positioning of the library in this new kind of environment, the institution itself in terms of a greater profile in terms of publication, and the researchers individually. So the future, we think, is extending the partnerships and collaborations. That's critical. We need to consolidate the business model. We're still being looked at in terms of our earnings, and it's a little scary sometimes. Data and publishing. That's the main area for us, I think, in terms of the future. It's experimental. There are lots of different options there. The national schemes and frameworks that are operating in terms of citing data, discovering data, reusing data, we want to actually work into those processes quite closely. And also develop a more strategic publishing program, perhaps around public policy. So they're the kind of areas we're looking at, but to maintain that kind of integration, to maintain the continuity, to look at preservation and long-term processes. Thank you.